You know what I love?
Sports.
Love sports.
Sports. When
It comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
I need to talk a little sports with you, Ags. David Nuño here with TexAgs Radio. Billy Liucci here on TexAgs Radio. Olin, Buchanan. Holy smokes, he made that catch. And I was like, we're going to go win this freaking game.
The best way for us to win is to do it together.
Do you realize everybody knows who you are right now?
I think we're coming into this year with a new confidence.
Schools are like, we're freaking Texas A&M, man. Like,
that's about as pretty a throw-catch combo as there is.
I saw the safety roll, the slot fade. I knew where I needed to put the ball.
You had no other option but one hand at that point.
Yeah, man, 50-50 ball, I got to come down with it.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Look, I like Jimbo Fisher, I do. And if you guys have listened to this show, really for the last 3 years, I have been critical of some of the stuff, but I liked him personally. But Texas A&M football was a little late to the party. They were a little slow on several levels. They were very slow getting plays in. They were slow getting timeouts in. They were late hiring assistants. They were just late to the party overall. And at the end of the day, that is part of what spiraled in a bad direction for Texas A&M. They're a little behind where they needed to be, more than a little bit behind if you look at the last couple years here. Worst of all, when it came to the direction of this program, I believe they became a very predictable team. We could predict the plays. We could predict the outcome. We also predicted a loss of hope, and that's exactly what has happened over the last couple years here. When fans lose hope, players lose hope as well, and we're going to break it all down as the firing of Jimbo Fisher just yesterday here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers in the Rollo Insurance Studios, the Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. I'm David Nuño, and he is our Heisman Trophy voter, Olin Buchanan. Olin, good morning, buddy.
Good morning. I'm with you. I like Jimbo. Nice guy. He really is. He's a good person, I believe. But, you know, you have to separate personal feelings from
success.
It's kind of like Billy Kennedy. Billy Kennedy, as a basketball coach here, I thought was just a heck of a guy. I liked him. I rooted for him inwardly. But is the basketball program in better shape with Buzz Williams as coach? Yeah, I think so. And maybe, hopefully, the football program will find themselves in much better shape with someone else in charge.
Look, it had to be done. I applaud Texas A&M for making it happen. Even after a win, you don't look at something in just college football. We all go with the wins and losses that kind of affects your week. But if you look at the totality, they weren't getting the job done. And instead of delaying the inevitable, because that's what it felt like. Yeah, they could have a little success. Let me rephrase this. I did believe he could turn it around, and that was my bad. I thought he could turn it around because in the offseason, they did that Hail Mary. They looked in the mirror and they said, we got to make some changes. They didn't make a necessary change. They didn't make enough changes, let me say, because I think there should have been a change in certain positions out there. But they did go hire an offensive coordinator. At the time, I was against Bobby Petrino for about 32 minutes. Then the more I thought about it, I was like, this is the right idea. And it might still be the right idea. Well, we're about to find out here the last couple weeks of the season. But I did think they could turn it around. But at the end of the day, I think you are who you are. It's certain when in coaching, when you lose it, you lose it. And I'm not saying he can't get it right somewhere else, but he lost it here.
Yeah, could they turn it around? Yes, I do, because I think they have a lot of good players. And I think if you were able to keep those players intact, that you could have, you could go into next year thinking, hey, all those close games, maybe you get that bounce or two that goes your way and then you win them. But you've been hoping for that for a couple of years, right?
Right.
And that just hasn't happened. And yeah, if you're going to let Bobby Petrino or somebody totally run the offense and you're not going to be involved other than to say, hey, let's run here or let's start passing a little bit more, then maybe you had a better chance. If you get and I know not everybody's going to agree with me on this, but if you get a better defensive coordinator, you're going to have a better chance. If you change offensive line coaches, you're going to have a better chance. But Jimbo seemed
reluctant.
I don't even know if we're defiant about making those moves. I think it's a better word. So it's the old Florida athletic director Jeremy Foley. His line. What you have to do eventually, you should do immediately.
1,000%. So here's my question to you. And I'm going to open it up to the lines, too. If you want to call us up or text us, 979-693-1150. You can call us on the Brian Foley Law Hotline, or you can text us on that same number. When did you know it was time to move on? Because for me, there's two different times I knew, okay? For me, I'd like to say App State. I didn't know after App State. It started trending in that direction after App State. For me, it was South Carolina, okay? 17-0. But then, as I said at the lead, they said they're going to bring in an offensive coordinator. I was like, all right, here we go. So it really wasn't until Tennessee this year that I knew it ain't going to work. I would like to say Miami. It wasn't Miami for me. I would like to say Alabama. It wasn't Alabama because they could have won that game. But they could have won that game became the theme of every game.
I think for me it was Miami. I remember writing in my column after the game saying, hey, you know what, Aggies, you might have to look at South Carolina, who to realize what's really happening here. South Carolina, in its history, hired 3 coaches that had won national championships before South Carolina. And they hired them 3 times, and none of them won championships at South Carolina. Now, Steve Spurrier got close. Lou Holtz made them better. Paul Dietzel, I can't even tell you what that happened. But and it was just the way that team looked, and still in disarray, not making the key plays when you have to, the same mistakes, all those things kept happening, and I wasn't convinced that Miami was a really good football team even then. So I think that's when I don't even want to say doubt started setting in. That's when I, in my mind, said, okay, I don't believe it. Now you got to prove me. Yeah, I have. My doubts are even more serious to I just don't think it's going to happen and prove me wrong. And then I think when they lost the lead against Alabama,
right.
I was like, yeah, because. But I think the real for me was that Miami game, and I said, this just doesn't look like it's going to happen here.
Look, App State is going to be a stain on his resume forever, and on Texas A&M, right? No doubt about it. That was like a sign of things to come. If you couldn't get a yard against App State, you weren't going to be able to get a yard versus other teams. And now we're talking about the rinse and repeat. Some of the same storylines we saw in 2022, we see in 2023. And all that being said, they are a better team than they were last year. They play more like a team. They got more wins, and it still wasn't good enough.
Well, they weren't. This year, they're not all freshmen, right?
Right.
I tell you another time, I think if you're opening it up to callers, and if callers come in, I bet you somebody's going to say, it was that Alabama game last year, that last play, when that's all you came up with. And by the way, had you been paying attention and not having to ruffle through all your papers trying to come up with your next play,
right,
you would have saw that there should have been 6 seconds left on the clock instead of 3. And then you came up with that play that had such a low percentage chance of work when you had Devon Achane in the backfield and he's not even a decoy. So even then, I think you could go back to that single play and think,
sure,
this guy's supposed to be an offensive mastermind, and that's what you come up with. That's what you're paying all this money for. So I think there's like Ross York said yesterday, it's the totality of it. It's hard to narrow it down to one thing, but I can understand your point about the Tennessee being the
Tennessee was like,
point.
It was just like, bro, this is what we do. This is who we are. Like, I think we all had fear. This is who we are last year, right? Like, you go to last year, but when I started seeing the same season play out, because I really did believe heading into the season, it's going to be different. Did I believe we're a national championship caliber team? No, because I'm an Aggie and I haven't seen a lot of success football-wise, right? But did I think there's a reason I thought 9-3, 8-4, right? There's a reason I thought that is because I don't know, man. Like, I just haven't seen enough. I haven't seen enough dog. I haven't seen enough winning. I just haven't. But here we are. And by the way, you said it before we started. We're showing some highlights from the game. Jalen Henderson, my friend, I wish you were the lead today. I do. I wish we could spend a lot of time on that, just the moxie you showed in the pocket. Look, we doubted you, and there's a reason we doubted you. We hadn't seen you.
All right.
We've seen you. I can't wait to see what your next, what your encore is. I can't wait to see what you can do.
It was like having a really good blind date.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
Hey, girl.
What are you doing?
You look like your profile pic? Yeah, let's go.
I didn't even have the profile pic.
Right?
And
I had a joke, but I wasn't going to go.
And it came out, and he was exceptional.
Sorry, we're talking about the date, or you're talking about Jalen. Sorry,
I said Jalen. Yeah, I said he. He was exceptional in the other night, and gosh, what a pleasant surprise! And you know what? I think a big part of it is that they appeared to me to run a more simplified offense for him and say, "Hey, look here, he's not there. Look here, it's one look, two look, run."
If that wasn't the most, let's see if I can say this the way I want to. That was the most fireable offense in the Jimbo regime, was like, where has this been? Because what Jalen did Saturday, I'm trying to get my days right because they're all kind of mixed in. I feel like you could have done with Max. I'm not saying you can run the ball with Max the way you ran with Jalen Henderson, but it looked like a simple offense. It looked so simple. It was one read. Okay, not there. All right, I'll run. There. Okay, I throw it down.
David, we were talking about the moment. I couldn't tell you the moment, but I know you'll remember this too. If you weren't even working here yet, you probably remembered as an Aggie fan. The first time I kind of scratched my head about Jimbo and wondering, okay, where's he going with this? When he was talking about how play didn't work, and he was, using the hand motions, and he said the pass was supposed to go here, and he put his hands about 6 inches in front of his body. He says, and it came out here, and he put it like on his right shoulder instead of out in front of his left. I do remember this. And I remember thinking, are you telling me that a college quarterback who's supposed to practice less than 20 hours a week, that if he misses a pass, if it's not accurate by 6 inches, that your offense can't be successful? That, to me, I remember being a red flag, but I thought, okay, well, let's see where we go with this.
Well, it was too complicated. We saw a simplified offense, and unfortunately, it was too little too late.
Yeah.
And by the way, Mississippi State's bad.
But not on defense.
Part of the reason the defense was bad is because the offense was,
they're always out on the field.
You think about some of the good fortune this A&M team has gotten this year. You got Auburn when they had no offense at all. Auburn's kind of figured some stuff out, but they were horrendous. You got Arkansas on one of their worst years in recent history. You get Mississippi State, who's got a coach who just got fired this morning in Zach Arnett for coaching malpractice to what he's done to that program in the aftermath of Mike Leach's untimely passing. All that stuff. A&M got the good fortune of a down SEC schedule. Alabama found their way. They found their way against A&M, by the way.
Oh, by the way, and who led Alabama to get as they found their way? And who did Jalen Milroe? Where did he?
He wanted to come here.
But
I think they went Eli Stowers that one. Yep.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry.
So look, it's a long way before 2023, and there's a lot of things that have to play out here over the next 2 weeks. Really, right?
Gosh, yeah. December 4th is when the portal opens, and December 20th is signing day.
We got 2 weeks. We'll go over some candidates in the next segment, but they've got 2 to 3 weeks, really, to get this done and get it done right. By the way, I applaud again. I said it on this show last week, and I thought Elijah, was it on this show? Mm-hmm. Maybe I didn't say it on this show. Maybe we were talking about Elijah Robinson, to me, would be the guy that they should go with. Players love him. Recruits love him. He's been successful with that D-line, and I think Billy yesterday said it on Luchador. He's an extension of TP, of Terry Price.
I think he's the best coach on the staff.
Yeah.
And I think what he'll do is he'll say, hey, Bobby, Petrino, just run the offense.
Do your thing.
And on defense, do your thing. And I'm going to make sure everything's organized and make sure we have the right guys in and, delegate.
Yeah. And those of you questioning the timing of this all, because it was interesting because social media is going to be a reflection of people. I don't want to say split. There were a lot of people upset that A&M handled it the way they handled it. There's never a great time to fire a coach. Never, right? It's not ideal, especially in season. Why after a win? What does this mean? Why couldn't they have just played it out? Well, we should have waited until next year. Here's the reality. You want to get the talent pool started now. You want to see who's out there. You want to get everything in place. The window is basically open. The transfer portal's open for A&M athletes now that there's been a coaching change. You want to start getting everything in motion now before you've got the real window opening up and signing day. You've got to get that stuff done.
Yeah, and they're going to have to – they said Ross Bjork says he's going to find a coach who's a recruiting machine. He's going to have to recruit his team. But the very first – I put one restriction on the next coach. I mean, I'd say all the things that you're looking for, but one restriction is if he wants to stay, you have to retain. The one guy, I don't care what you do with your staff, but you have to retain Elijah Robinson. He is staying here if he wants to. If you want to be the coach here, you understand that's your defensive line coach, if not more.
Yep. I like the way you said that. Let's do this. Let's go around the room and say hello to the people. If you want to call in, as I mentioned, you can do that on the Brian Foley Law hotline. Good people have a bad day. Call Brian Foley Law, 936-596-0407, serving Houston, the Woodlands, Conroe, and the Brazos Valley. We go behind the glass to a very busy Nick Savage, Nick, props on the new intro, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Like you said, very busy trying to get everything ready for the show. Don't have too much more to add than what y'all said. Just kind of shocking it all came out. I understand the timing. I mean, might as well do it now instead of, what's the point of waiting another week or so? So that makes sense to me. So just shocking, but also excited to see what the future holds for Aggie football.
Yep, no doubt about that. Let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Jared Schultz is there. Jared, good morning, buddy.
Good morning. Yeah, just kind of like what you were saying, David. I don't want Henderson's performance to kind of get overshadowed by this whole coaching dilemma. And he had an incredible game. And the first time that we've had a quarterback with more than one rushing touchdown since Kellen Mond in 2019. I kind of liked how the offense looked with that new look. And on top of that, I loved listening to Ross's press conference. Just the transparency and honesty that he brought. I loved hearing that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I'm excited, man. I'm excited about what the future. It's a long. You remember how long that offseason was last year?
Oh yeah.
It was so long. Like they're all long, but it felt even longer last. I mean, there was no bowl game. There will be a bowl game this year.
Yes. Basketball is going to be good. Help you get through that.
Hey, by the way,
big win at Ohio State.
Huge win, quadrant one win. By the way, we're going to have Buzz Williams on the show at 10 o'clock. So Billy's going to be with us from 9:20 on. Buzz will be with us at 10 o'clock, Tom Hart at 9:05, or 9 o'clock exactly. So we've got a busy show. And figurine champ, I don't think today is the day to talk about what happened on the basketball court on Friday afternoon. We can talk about what happened on the basketball court on Friday evening, but not Friday afternoon.
Okay.
What happened? I was going to say we can let that.
We can let that slide.
Yeah, we can let that. More important things going on.
Yeah, way more important things
on the basketball court.
No, I mean there was a little one-on-one basketball game. But,
that one.
Yeah, we don't want to embarrass people here on the show. All right, let's do this. Let's get a couple text messages in, then we'll hit a break. Then we're going to go through some of the candidates. Shall we, Jared?
All right, we got one from BDR on the YouTube page. He says, "I've been asked for money 4 times this morning."
Who's asked you for money?
I'm assuming
Probably
he means
12-man
Foundation.
Help!
But we need as much help as we can get.
No, I think we're doing
all
right.
We got another one from
help.
We got one from Jeb just saying, "I just hope we can retain half the roster." I know Josh Pate was talking about how we're going to lose players in the transfer portal, and just kind of, do you agree?
Yeah.
Look, I think you were going to lose players regardless, right? The sense that I got, what do you?
I got $4 to contribute.
Buddy, that's a good lunch right there. That's a good Nuño lunch right there.
Where are you going to eat lunch for $4?
Buddy, I make a sandwich or I'll go to Fargo's later. But we'll talk about Fargo's in a minute.
Later, yeah.
Where was I? What was the question again?
Are we going to lose recruits?
Yes. Yeah. You were going to anyway. Brodinger's been talking about it. Like, if you don't win and win a certain way, you were probably going to lose recruits and people on your team right now.
Did you see Ashton Funk and the big kid from Lafayette, Louisiana?
Dominic McKinley?
They both reaffirmed their commitment yesterday.
Sure. Yeah. Look,
Elijah Robinson.
Elijah Robinson is a huge part of that. everything is TBD.
Yes.
We live in a world that everything's TBD for just about everybody.
Well, that's why you got to make this hire by December 4th, because you want your new coach, to get in the transfer portal too.
Hey, guys, come on.
We can bring you here. And here's the deal. And I know we'll talk about this. Look, every athletic director has a list of coaches. And he's had his list before the season started. If I have to look for a new coach, here's my list.
Yep.
So don't think that, they fired Ross. I'm sorry, they fired Jimbo yesterday. Okay, now we got to scramble to hire a coach. I would be shocked if there hasn't already been contact with several coaches already.
Well, by the way, I thought Ross was exceptional yesterday.
He was.
He was really
He always
good.
is.
He's
a very professional guy.
Polished, professional. I think he had the right tone, the right messaging. He spoke
the right
to us.
sports jacket.
Well, he's a sharp dresser.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. We'll hit a break. Let's go through some of the candidates. It's our show. We do it the way we want to do. We will spend more time on Jalen Henderson at some point during this hour because I think he deserves more than just a mention here on the program. In fact, if I were allowed to, I don't know if I am. Maybe I am allowed to.
And NIL
I would say that would be my contribution. I'm taking you to Fargo's, Jay.
On Tuesday.
Why wouldn't I? Because they have
rib tips. Boy, if anyone ever earned some rib tips, it was Jalen Henderson. Yeah. That was a performance worthy of rib tips. That was a rib tip worthy performance. 4 touchdowns.
2 on the ground, 2 in the air.
Yeah.
Wave them like they just don't care.
That's right.
With a big head of hair. Sorry, I was just trying to rhyme.
So yes, an apt reward would be a trip to Fargo's on Tuesday for some rib tips. But you know what? Even a guy like Jalen Henderson would have to order them early because they're gone. Gone fast. They're gone.
They don't take their time getting the menu in. They do it fast.
Right. They do it fast.
They don't have this. They have this.
And
this is my Fargo script.
But you know what? If Jalen decided that he didn't want rib tips, he could still get some pork ribs or some chopped beef or sliced beef or
we had a dude, I can't remember his name right now, I apologize, but who tweeted us on Friday, dude, I had the catfish, it was incredible. Did you see that tweet?
I didn't. But
you tweeted both of us.
Must have been Friday.
It was Friday, 1701 South Texas Avenue in Bryan, without a doubt. The what?
The best barbecue in Texas, which means it's the best barbecue in the world.
You may not know this information, but that's their trademark.
Well, it's true.
It's Fargo's. Welcome back, everybody. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio, The Go Hour presented by The Warehouse at CC Creations. YouTube is blowing up at the moment. Bunch of you guys, I don't know if you're first-time watchers or listeners, if you're watching from another fan base and you love seeing A&M's misery. This is not misery, ladies and gentlemen. This is more optimism because of what we think the future is going to be. But while you're there, why don't you like, comment, subscribe? Definitely subscribe. Trying to get those subscription numbers up there. OB, we're going to go through some candidates here in a moment. Somebody mentioned Dion as a candidate on there. I'm not interested. I love his... Dion may be a phenomenal coach, but it's too early in that process for me to see anything there that I think... I want Texas A&M. I'm not saying you have to go get the proven guy. They've already done the Jimbo proven guy, and it didn't work. But I want somebody with a little bit more substance out there, and that's just where I'm at. I'm not a Dion guy for A&M right now.
Well, I think I don't think A&M needs the sideshow.
Yeah,
that is Deion Sanders after the sideshow that was Jimbo Fisher. I mean, there was so much focus in Jimbo Fisher's tenure on Jimbo as the coach that made a ton of money. It's not so much of what was going on with the program, especially in the first 3 years when they were successful. I think you need a coach who just wants to be here and win, and it's not about, hey, make sure you call me this certain name, and I'm going to be saying – I just don't. There's certain things about the way Dion has handled his program, like saying my players aren't good enough.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe you're not coaching them well enough either. And then firing your offensive coordinator after you say, "Well, we don't have any good linemen."
Right.
Well, you said you don't have any good linemen, so obviously your offensive coordinator's the problem, right? So all those said, I just don't think A&M needs the sideshow that is Dion.
So I wrote down a list of some preliminary candidates from what I think is out there available and what some of the national pundits are writing out. And so, a lot of these are just casting out because you don't know, right? They're going to hire this firm to help narrow down the choice.
Which I hate, but go ahead.
Yep. Mike Elko is a name that we're going to hear a lot.
I'd be fine with that.
Yep. Mike Elko is definitely one of, I would say, in most people's top three. Mm-hmm. Right? Lance Leopold at Kansas. Are you intrigued by that name?
No, I don't think. It's remarkable what he's done at Kansas. He's as old as I am, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that would be he would be high on my list.
Okay, I'll keep going. Jeff Traylor at UTSA.
I'm intrigued.
Intrigued is the right word, right?
Now, when he had his quarterback, he had a heck of a team, and he's a East Texas guy. I'm an East Texas guy, so I've got that bias going toward him. And look, he's done a good job at UTSA. So if you wanted to take that gamble, and he'd certainly be affordable, I wouldn't hate it. I'd be open to that.
Dan Campbell.
Well, that's not happening.
But I mean, he's
look, if Dan Campbell wanted to come back and coach Texas A&M, I'd be completely on board with it. I think Dan Campbell would be a phenomenal recruiter.
Okay, Mike Norvell.
No. First of all, he's not leaving the whole Florida. I think he just needs to stay away from Florida State.
Okay, this next one is probably my number one candidate that I don't think can happen.
Okay,
Dan Lanning.
Yeah, that'd be my first choice, but I just don't think it's feasible. I don't think you're ever going to outbid Phil Knight.
Yep. Well, and also, if you're already spending X amount of... Now, if Dan Lanning were to send some strong signals to Texas A&M...
He'd be my first choice.
I want to come, and I want to bring my staff that used
bring
to work
Malto
there.
back with you.
Right?
Or
then you find the money. But, again, the buyout, I think, is $20 million. You're going to have to pay him more than you're paying. It just... They say money is not an object for A&M. It is. It is part of the conversation. Lane Kiffin.
I wouldn't hate it. I might hate him.
It might be hard for us.
But
you guys would definitely spar at a press conference.
Maybe not. I think I'm getting a bad rap. I don't think I go in trying to argue with the coach. I try to ask the coach the questions that I think our viewers and readers want to ask themselves.
Kalen DeBoer at Washington.
Okay. I'd rather have Lanning, but okay.
I'd like to see what he can do without Michael Penix. Like that is part of the
there is
conversation,
that.
right? But the dude's darn good.
He's got a darn good quarterback to work with if you can keep him here.
Are you intrigued at all by Jed Fish at Arizona?
Too close to Fisher. Fish is too close to Fisher.
Okay.
No, yeah, you know what? He's done a good job. But you know what? He also lost to Mississippi State. It was early. I don't want a coach that's had one good year somewhere.
Okay. Sonny Dykes.
I don't think so.
Chris, is it Kleeman or Kleiman? How's it pronounced? The Kansas State coach.
I'm
really intrigued by his resume and his personality.
I think it's Kleiman, but
That's
I could be wrong.
It's Kleiman. It's Kleiman.
Not after what he did in that loss to Texas.
Oh, yeah. Don't remind me about that. You're right. James Franklin.
No. What? Hey, if you can't get Penn State over the hump, why? And by the way, have you seen that offense?
And did you see some of the coaching issues this past week?
So why would you want James Franklin? Seems like the same guy.
I got a name that I think will interest you. Cliff Kingsbury.
I would not hate it. And I know some would dismiss it. Oh, he failed at Texas Tech. Everybody fails at Texas Tech. It's Texas Tech, for crying out loud.
Yep.
They're the classless clowns, said Rusty Burson. But no, I wouldn't hate it. Now, can he bring in a defensive coordinator that'll be really good to go with him?
Right.
But after what I've watched in offensively the last 3 years, heck yeah.
Glenn Schumann, the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia. He's been helping out a college football program for 14 years.
Yeah, here's
He's
the
33.
deal. And I probably wouldn't, I'd be okay with that, but here's the deal. How many, because you said, well, he worked with Kirby Smart. So, well, how many?
And he worked with Saban too,
Yeah,
right?
well, how many coaches who worked with Saban haven't panned out as head coaches?
A lot.
Well, Kirby has.
Jimbo did.
And?
Lane. Do you give Lane?
Yeah, I give Lane.
Sarkey?
Okay, so maybe there's more than I think. But I can tell you a whole bunch of them that haven't.
You're exactly right.
I guess what I'm saying is,
if you believe in the guy, I don't care.
Right. Bob Stoops was a defensive coordinator at Florida before Oklahoma hired him as the head. R.C. Slocum was a defensive coordinator before he got hired as a head coach. So sometimes you just got to look at that guy who's a coordinator or who hadn't played hadn't been a coach at a huge program and say, you know what, you just need a shot and we're going to give it to you.
Yep.
And let me say this. I know football's a whole different animal, but it seems to me that Ross Bjork has hit home runs on all the coaching hires he's made.
Joni
Taylor, I think that looks like a home run to me.
Jamie Morrison.
Now both of those are home runs right now that look like they're just staying inside the foul pole.
Right now.
But
seems right.
But Schloss is a
grand slam
and to dead away center field.
Trisha Ford, Garrett Chadwell, right?
Yeah. So he's been amazing at hiring.
Yep.
And if he can pull this one off, he becomes like the greatest athletic director ever here.
Yeah. Now, by the way, promoting Brian Corton, they've done a really good job. But football is what pays the bills and it's a different animal. And they haven't gotten it right. When's the last time they got it right? RC? Really got it right?
Here's the thing.
They've all had blips.
Let me say that I applauded A&M with what they did with Jimbo Fisher. You had to do something bold to shake up this program, and you did. And the first 3 years, I thought Jimbo had A&M on a path to be exactly what you envisioned. They should have been in the playoff, I believe, in 2020, right? They might have been the second best team in the country that year. Might have been. And then it all fell apart in the last 3 years, and the obstinates with your offense and sticking with some coaches, assistants that I just don't think was very good. I don't know what you're doing, strength and conditioning, all those things.
Yep.
I think he mismanaged his program. But the first 3 years, I thought it was pretty good.
So there's a bunch of people who want to talk on the hotline, so we'll do that. We'll hit a break. We'll come back. We'll take your calls. We'll look at some of your text messages, and we'll continue investigating what the future is going to look like and what went wrong with Jimbo. Right now, if you're tired of living with chronic joint pain, you need to make sure that you reach out to our good friends there at QC Kinetics. If the pain is in your knees, if it's in your hips, if it's in your back, don't let it sideline you any longer. Don't let them tell you that surgery is your only option. Call QC Kinetics now for the future of pain relief. They're the nation's leader in regenerative medicine, restoring and repairing that damaged joint tissue to make you feel the best way, and that's the natural way, the science of using properties from your own body to bring you lasting relief with no drugs and no downtime. By the way, they're trusted by patients all around the country, and now they're here in the Brazos Valley, so you need to check them out. Over 150 clinics nationwide. Get started now so you can live big in 2024. And it's a great use of your FSA and HSA funds out there, getting you the relief that you need so badly. These treatments are getting amazing reviews for people with arthritic pain or pain from any injury out there. Again, no drugs, no downtime, no surgery. Call QC Kinetics now for a free consultation and let their medical professionals give you a better path towards pain-free life. Call them up, 979-452-6000. QC Kinetics, 979-452-6000. That's 979-452-6000. Look, we got a lot to get into still. Coaching hire, what went wrong with Jimbo and whatnot. It's TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. I know we have some callers, but I do want to go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. I know Kay Nagley later is going to have an update on all things happening. Soccer won, basketball won. Like, it was a great weekend for Aggie sports. But, Jared, I know you had something for us.
Yeah, A&M's women's cross-country team and their men's athlete, Eric Cazares, they booked their tickets to the NCAA Championship. After they came second in the women's side, and for only the second time in program history, first time in 23 years, the women's squad qualified for NCAA Championship.
Yep. Congratulations. Coach Henry and I have been going back and forth. An incredible – and by the way, Eric Cazares, who will be back in that chair here very soon. Just proud of him, proud of that whole program. Let's go to the hotline, and the Brian Foley Law hotline, I should say. Ross is on there, and he wants to talk about Elijah Robinson. Ross, welcome to TexAgs.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for taking the call. Kind of shocking. Hey, Olin said it. He said, you got to keep Elijah Robinson. And then when I went through the candidates, Elijah Robinson wasn't mentioned. Do we roll the bones? If the Aggies are going to beat Abilene Christian. If Elijah Robinson led Aggies throttle LSU with two coordinators that finally open things up and do what they want to do, and then they throttle a bowl opponent. Olin was saying the timeline is we want to get the new coach in by December 4th. Do we go with a guy that is a proven recruiter, a proven guy that's loved by the players, but not yet proven head coach? But if he does what he's supposed to do in these 2 or 3 games, do we give him the keys? What do y'all think?
All right, so let's chat about that.
I wouldn't dismiss it.
Appreciate your call, Ross. We'll hang up and you can listen.
I can remember when Dabo Swinney was named coach at Clemson. He'd never been a coordinator. He was a receivers coach, and people laughed about it.
Look, yesterday Ross did say that he would be considered, or everyone's considered right now.
Right.
I'm not against it. I'm not against anything because I don't know. You went the proven route. You went the hot shot coach at a smaller school. And no shot at U of H, but you did that. You went and got the NFL guy and Mike Sherman. Like you went and got the hot name with Fran. At the time, Fran was a hot name.
I don't want this to sound like I'm pigeonholing Coach Robinson or if I'm criticizing him. I'm not, because for all I know, he may be an offensive mastermind. It's just untapped, right? But I've seen Gene Chizik win a national championship. I've seen Larry Coker win a national championship.
I remember that.
I've seen Ed Orgeron win a national championship.
Gus Malzahn?
Well, I think he's actually an offensive wizard. I do. But I guess where I'm going is if you give me a coach who can just keep things organized, can get in good coordinators and let them work and not try to undermine them. And if you'll do the recruiting and be the, I don't want to say face, but just the CEO type.
Sure. You can win here.
That's what, see, Ed Orgeron, if he would have been saying, hey, I'm going to have great coordinators and I'm going to recruit and I am going to motivate and I am going to represent, I think he could have continued to be a successful head coach at LSU. But what he did was, he lost his coordinators first of all, and then he tried to put himself more into things, and he just didn't have the X's and O's expertise when things went bad to fix things. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think Elijah Robinson could be a successful head coach as long as, and again, he may be an offensive mastermind, we just don't know, but as long as he had really good recruiters really good coordinators. I think with his personality and with his recruiting ability, and I'm assuming he has organizational skills, or he wouldn't have been such a good recruiter. I think he could be successful.
So please don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, but follow me. I want you to win the press conference. But when I say win the press conference, the jury's still out on several of the coaches that A&M has hired over the last couple years, but they're trending in that right direction.
Yes.
I knew at the opening press conference of Joni Taylor, this is different. There's something different about the way she runs her operation. I'd say the same thing about Jamie Morrison. Absolutely, even though Schloss had way more skins on the wall and had been to the College World Series X amount of times, he won it for me, right? I want somebody who, like, when I hear him talk, I'm like, I want to go play for that guy. Like, when I hear Schloss talk, I'm not a baseball player. I want to go play baseball for him. He inspires me. I want somebody who can inspire young men. I want somebody who can inspire a fan base. Oh, and by the way, back it up with the results.
And maybe to the caller's question, Ross, maybe that guy is Elijah Robinson. But if you were able to get a guy like Dan Lanning, and I'm not saying you could, that's where I would go. I'm just saying I wouldn't dismiss your idea.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know if Lanning would work either because there's no guarantee. There's
never a guarantee.
The only guarantee, I think, is Nick Saban.
And that's not a guarantee.
Right, because of his age and, but I'm saying he's the one guy, like, if he said, I'll come to A&M, $15 million a year, everybody start throwing money in, right? Like, he is that good of a coach. Everybody else, is Kirby probably the next one?
I think Kirby's the first one.
First one, okay.
Yeah.
Would you call Kirby? Hey, Kirby, just a chit-chat with you. Just want to chit-chat.
What would it take, Herb?
$40 million a year. Easy.
You know what? That check you get from the SEC every year? Just have them send it to me.
Yeah, just send it right there. People are saying, give E-Rob a true, this is Phil Butler on the YouTube page, auditioning these last 2 games. Like
3, actually.
3. I'm not talking about an audition. I'm talking about what is the plan? Right? Like, there's got to be more than winning games. Like, no, not more than winning games. At the end of the day, that's what the most important. But I'm saying at the end of this season, it's not about what you win. I want to know your plan. How are you going to get our program out of neutral, to use a term from Ross, which we should have played one of his sound bites, but we've been busy.
Yeah. Sounds like some of our people are doing the old John Lennon song. All they are saying is give E-Rob a chance.
Give him a chance. Look, I don't know. I'd have to talk to him. But all these guys, I want to know the plan. I want to know what's your recruiting strategy. I want to know
Should we ask E-Rob today in the press conference if he's planning to apply for this job?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely should. Yeah. All right, let's hit a break. When we come back here on TexAgs Radio, we'll do Around Aggie Land plus a lot more. Look, guys, this is going to be nonstop. It's going to be nonstop for weeks. Do you feel like you've rested well recently?
Actually,
I haven't.
Actually, I fell asleep like 8 o'clock last night after a late game and then everything that happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So I slept from 8 till 5.
I have not slept well for days, and I think it's because of all this stuff going on. Like, it's just in my head when I sleep, when I wake. Like, there's a lot. It's the future of Aggie football. Like, what we do for work. Like, there's a lot on the line, right? Like, let's got to get this hire right.
But you know how you feel after you've had a really good sleep? You feel refreshed. And maybe this is going to refreshen the future of Aggie football.
Refreshing. I like fresh air, so I go to Milliken Reserve from time to time. That might have been not the worst segue.
No, that was pretty good, actually.
Was it?
Yeah,
it was a Nolan segue.
It almost would have sounded like we planned it.
Yeah, we did not.
No,
the teleprompter
we don't plan
broke.
anything.
No, teleprompter broke a long time ago. Milliken Reserve is a farm-to-table community. They are in College Station. They've got homes, they got farms, and they got wide open spaces. And their mission is to build a healthy community around nature, dedicated to the conservation of a healthy community. They connect families to nature and to each other. They've got an extensive network of trails throughout a wooded landscape that includes walking and equestrian paths, creeks and ponds and gathering areas, you name it. A variety of native species find their homes right there in those preserved woods, ponds, and creeks. They got the white-tailed deer, the songbirds, the rabbits, and the turtles that provide a natural setting for people to connect and come together. You can go hiking there, biking, canoeing, you name it. They got it all out there. And if you're looking for a home, you can live there. They've got awesome neighborhoods. They got the Creek, which is 10-plus acre wooded estates. You got the Hollow and a private gated community, and the Meadows that are responsive to the natural surroundings. If you want more information on the homes or just hanging out there at Milliken Reserve, check out the website, millikenreserve.com. That's millikenreserve.com. And we're back, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. It is now time for Around Aggieland, presented by Norman G. State Bank. Norman G. State Bank, rock solid banking. The website, normangstatebank.com. We go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Kay Negley.
We've had enough football news this morning.
No, we haven't. That's what pays the bills, baby.
Well, I'm going to move on to some of the other sports that happened this weekend just to shine some light on them. Men's basketball earned a Quadrant 1 victory on the road in Columbus, holding off Ohio State 73-66. That was on Friday. Wade Taylor and Tyrese Radford have themselves a game and scored 21 apiece.
Henry Coleman with 20.
Yeah, Henry Coleman 20 and 10. And then next up, they will take on SMU on Tuesday on the road. That should be an interesting one, and I know we will have Buzz to talk to later about that. Women's basketball is off to a 2-0 start as they cruise to a 74-55 Sunday victory over North Texas. Sophomore forward Janiyah Barker finally got going and led the way with 18 points for the Maroon and White. They will have a big road test on Thursday. They travel to Purdue. That was an NCAA tournament team last year, so should be a good test for them. Volleyball, unfortunately, dropped their match on Friday in Columbia as Missouri got the best of Jamie Morrison's Aggies 3-1. Texas A&M now sits at 15-8, and then 7-6 in the SEC with 4 matches remaining on the schedule. And then soccer had a great match on Friday. Mia Pante's 22nd minute goal the 8 seed A&M defeated Colorado in the opening round of the NCAA tournament. Now they will have a rematch with Florida State coming up this Friday in Tallahassee, so should be a good one to watch.
OB, this goal was phenomenal. You'll appreciate it. Maybe 30 yards out, she's making a hard tackle, and the ball ricochets off the defender up in the air 30 yards into the goal. It was a beauty.
Nice.
Yeah, good stuff.
I can see it in my mind.
Olin, a day like today, I feel like the go hour should be 5 hours, buddy, but that's why we have all week to do it.
Well, I heard Billy talking on
Sirius?
Yeah, this morning.
Yep.
And I'm sure he'll be having plenty more to talk about.
He's got a lot to talk about. I think he was on SEC Network this morning. He was on with the Sirius folks. He'll be all over the place. All right.
Danny and Dusty.
Thank you, buddy.
You bet.
When we come back on TexAgs Radio National Perspective, we'll talk to Tom Hart, get his thoughts on everything happening. Billy will be with us probably around 9:20. So make sure those YouTube numbers keep going up, TexAgs.com, The Zone, you name it, in the CW. All right, it's TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We'll be back in a few. Well. Hour number 2, National Perspective Time is TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Let's go to the Brian Foley Law Hotline. That's where we find Tom Hart here on TexAgs Radio, SEC Network, ESPN. Great. What's up, Tom? Good morning, buddy.
Good morning. I just want to know how you feel today.
I feel great.
What are your feelings at this moment?
Look, I really like Jimbo. I think it should have worked with Jimbo. It was time. It was time. I would say it was time before the aftermath of the Ole Miss game. I wanted to believe in the offseason, even though there was a part of me that's like, I don't know if this is ever going to work, man. This is like, but when he went out and said, I'm going to get an offense coordinator, I wanted to believe it was going to work. By the Tennessee game this year, even though they had lost quarterback after quarterback, at this point I was like, I don't think it's ever going to work. And I probably knew before, but I was holding on to hope. I wish him well. I liked him. He treated me with a lot of respect. But this program cannot be, as to borrow a line from Ross Bjork yesterday, stuck in neutral. And that's what they've been since I got here. Maybe it's my fault, but since I got to TexAgs, this program has been stuck in neutral.
The former Florida athletic director, Jeremy Foley, had a great line that he used when it came to making changes. And I'm paraphrasing here, but it was something along the lines of, and maybe he stole this from a Greek philosopher, but what must be done eventually should be done immediately, right? Once it becomes clear that this isn't the right guy to lead your program, there's no sense in waiting, even if it saves you $5-10 million over the next season. If he's not the right guy, you got to cut bait and move on. So I commend A&M for making that move and for moving on. I thought it was evident last year. It wasn't just the losing streak. It was the vibe around the program. Toxic would be too strong a word, but it was discombobulated. Mm-hmm. And people have asked me since the change, well, why hasn't A&M won? Like, what got in their way? And I think the answer is pretty simple. I think it's Jimbo. I think this hiring, in hindsight, it's all 2020 in hindsight, was very similar to like an aging slugger getting that big mega free agent deal. You know, it's Albert Pujols to the Angels. You're paying a guy based on what he did with hope that he's going to recreate it. But his offense was archaic. His quarterback coaching was a great fit 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and the game has changed. So I think that was eventually and probably immediately what got in the way of the program having success. Yeah, obviously you can't argue against the recruiting. The recruiting was top-notch. It was fantastic, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. But the execution on game day and the kind of vibe around the program, all of that got in the way and turned into a roadblock.
So with my Aggie glasses on, I agree with everything you said there. The thing that I think made me stay a little bit more optimistic, which ended up biting us in the butt, was these games were all tight. Look, did they just make that was my thing this summer. If they just make one more offensive play a game, they're going to, which is true, except when it's 2 years in a row of if they make one more, when you find ways to lose games every time, different ways, special teams touchdown, dumb interception at the end, block field goal, we can go through it. Can't get a yard against App State. When that becomes the theme, then it's time to move on.
Well, and to your point, it's why are we a play away? Why are we constantly a play away? By the way, you should never be a play away against Appalachian State or that Auburn program last year, or even Ole Miss last year. Like, based on where this program is, what's expected, what's invested in it, should be multiple plays ahead of those programs. But I remember going into the Auburn game last year, and what was all of the discussion going in? It was whether or not and throughout that game, are the wide receivers allowed to wear sleeves or not? This is what it's boiled down to. Like, these are the distractions that you've allowed to infiltrate your walls, is whether or not your five-star wide receivers, who, by the way, you need to be successful, you need to be in the right frame of mind. And listen, we know that wide receivers historically are very fragile divas, right? You put them in a glass case, handle them properly. They're the key to your success. And we're worried about whether or not they can wear sleeves and what our team rules are against that. That's the kind of stuff I think that eventually got in the way. It's not making the main thing, which is go out and win games. Now, I will say this. We did Jimbo's first game against Northwestern State, and there was so much excitement around the program. And the message at the time was, this deserves to be a national program. And I thought his sights being set on some big picture items were commendable at the time. I mean, we spent 10 minutes talking about his desire to convince Delta to add a direct flight from Atlanta into Easterwood, right? Okay, that's the kind of big picture thinking a CEO should go for. But in the end, like, let's worry about what's happening on the field. And I'll even go back to that previous spring. I was doing a baseball game. I showed up for spring practice. Andy Staples was with me on the sideline, and we're just watching ball. And Jimbo came in with a discipline that was so extreme that he kicked a kid out of practice that day, and he gathered the team at the end of practice, and he promised all of them that if they didn't want to be there, he'd have papers waiting on his desk, and they could go wherever they wanted. And if that was Baton Rouge or Tuscaloosa or Austin, he would sign the papers right then, but they had to understand that it's his way. He wasn't going to let fly what went in the previous coaching regime. And I was really, really impressed. I thought he was bringing a level of discipline into that program that needed to be there coming off the Sumlin era. But none of that added up. And in the end, you got to win games. And when you go buy a Maserati or a Porsche or a Mercedes, you expect that level of quality that you're paying for. You don't want to leave the lot in a junker. And I thought last year was probably pretty good example of that.
What do you say to those who are like, it's not totally on Jimbo? I mean, he's lost his starting quarterback and his backup quarterback the last 3 years. I mean, how good is LSU going to be without Jaden Daniels? You know, when that comes up, how do you respond?
Well, I'll give them this. Depth is more of a concern in college football than it's ever been. Those second-string guys, the quarterback position has always been guys looking for playing time and finding value in playing time. But even outside of that position, those guys that historically would be patient to sit and wait in a program, whether that be A&M or Alabama or USC, have now said, I can go down the road to a lesser school, get immediate playing time, and oh, by the way, they're going to pay me. You know, I'm going to get some NIL money to go down there and be a starter as opposed to being a backup here. So I think that's real, the lack of depth in college football, because talent has been more dispersed than ever before. That being said, for 1 year, sure. But if your reputation and your paycheck is built on you being an offensive mastermind and a quarterback guru, then you need to have elite play there 4 out of 5 years. I'm elite. And we know that's what it takes to win in college football these days. Look where Alabama is now with Jalen Milroe versus where they were in the month of September. That's a huge difference. And he was getting paid to not just recruit, but also develop 5-star quarterbacks, and that didn't happen.
All right, so Tom Hart gets to play athletic director. He gets to play Ross Bjork right now. Who's on your short list of guys that A&M has to try to get?
Well, first of all, I'd be excited to give that a try because Ross has an incredible wardrobe, and I want to try on those blazers and see if they fit because they always look good on him. And I know he rocks the Blue Delta jeans. My first phone call is to Seattle and to Kalen DeBoer. We had their bowl game last year in San Antonio against Texas. I covered him when he was at Indiana prior to that. I think he is an elite mind when it comes to coaching. His organizational skills are through the roof. He relates to players. He's got an incredible staff, and it's a staff that wants to work for him and be with him. And I think that's really important, that you don't get that everywhere. At the time, there was no way he was going to leave Washington. I mean, they've built something special. I know it's usually off people's radar. And he had a great AD. Well, she has since left. He's got a new athletic director. And their staff is paid handsomely. His coordinators make a ton of money. But I would absolutely call Kalen DeBoer and try to convince him to give A&M a look and to convince him that he can reach heights at A&M that aren't possible in Seattle or even going forward when Washington goes into the Big Ten and all of the travel issues and recruiting issues they're going to have to deal with. as a side. Obviously, Mike Elko knows what it's like to be there. I wonder if I think Elko is obviously ready for a big job, but he's also proven that he'll say no to other jobs. Like he had a chance to take the Temple head coaching job before he came to A&M, or maybe it was after his first year. I forget. I think it was before he came there. And it wasn't the right fit for him. And so he's obviously very pragmatic. Most assistant coaches would have jumped at that opportunity to be a head coach for the first time. But I think he's very pragmatic about what his next steps will be and where he has the best chance to win. So I don't know if – I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if A&M is the perfect job for Mike Elko in Elko's mind. But I would absolutely call him. I think he's a great defensive mind, and he knows the challenges of being at A&M. And he knows what recruiting is like. I don't think Dan Lanning is going to come. I think the buyout is too steep, especially when you're talking about, being $80 million down to get this staff out the door. But I think you just swing for the fences, man. I think it's once again, it is an elite job based on the resources there, both financially and from a recruiting standpoint. What got in the way of A&M over the last 5 years, which is really when it became an elite job, was the guy in the corner office. I mean, that's what got in the way. That obstruction's gone. So I think a lot of coaches need to look at this and say that there's a place I can go in and compete for national championships.
Tom, how ironic is it that the weekend Jimbo gets fired is the weekend that everything worked? Like other than the first special teams play, right? Kick return for a touchdown. Jalen Henderson, third string quarterback, looks like a freaking stud out there. Just the moxie and just the throws, and the offense was simplified. The offensive line blocked. They were able to run. Defense forcing turnovers, getting after the quarterback like they've done all year long. Everything seemed to work on the weekend that Jimbo was let go.
Is this the first time in history, or at least Power 5 history, that both head coaches in the same game were let go after that game?
Might be.
I mean, and I think by saying that, what I'm saying here is that take it into consideration the opponent, right? Mississippi State is a disaster right now. They're a shell of a program, which is why they felt like they had to make the move with Arnett and get in on some good candidates early. Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the decision making, though. I mean, obviously this was figured out before that game, and you look forward to what's to come. The LSU series, as great as Jaden Daniels is, and I think he's got my number one Heisman vote right now, especially watching him in person Saturday night. That LSU defense is abhorrent. It is god awful, and we know the history of LSU A&M. Anything can happen in that game, right? So I think Ross acted expediently, recognizing not only the timing of the Board of Trustees meeting, but also, what if we don't make this move? What if we don't make this move and he wins a couple games to close things out and recruiting continues to be good, and then you go, well, are we just kicking the can down the road? So, yeah, once again, if it's to be done eventually, it must be done immediately.
Look, A&M's in a weird spot. This hire is going to be huge, but for the players that are on the roster right now, how important is it for Elijah Robinson to get them to win, 2-3 games down the stretch? I mean, everybody expects them to beat Abilene Christian, but with what is here and what the next coach might have, and by the way, Elijah Robinson might be a candidate as well.
It's the most impossible job in sports, what's left of a coaching staff in this scenario. Because not only are you dead man walking, but you're expected to continue. Some guys obviously want to be kept on by the next staff, and so they're going to work towards that goal. They're going to continue to recruit, which I've never really understood, but all staffs do it. Ed Ogeron, I'm just thinking back to when he was let go. He was out grinding and still making recruiting trips and going on the road, even though he had been let go. And I asked him, I said, dude, what are you doing? Why? And he said, listen, this is my job. This is what I'm getting paid to do. And so I'm gonna finish out, what they're paying me for. Part of that responsibility. I think back to what Auburn had last year with Cadillac Williams. They had a guy who bled Auburn. He was his heart was in the right place, and the players loved him. And that didn't just resonate in the locker room, and he didn't just get the guys to play. It resonated with the fan base as well. And I think that's what's available and what's out in front of you is not only do you have, a home game against Abilene Christian, where you can come out and just go ball with no pressure. But then, like, you got an opportunity against LSU, and you got an opportunity to play with emotion and to prove people wrong and to say, listen, we're an elite program. And that motivation is not just a game day motivation. The challenge there is each and every day in practice and with all the other stuff that are on these kids' plate, whether that be schoolwork or coaches' plate when it comes to recruiting. This is a real grind now over the last couple of weeks of the regular season for those guys.
Were you surprised they made the move like this weekend or this season?
Yeah, I was. It caught me by surprise, and I was going to ask you or Billy about that. Like, how far out did anybody see this coming? I thought if a move wasn't made after last season, and just kind of the aura around the program last year was not good, and we had multiple games down the stretch, including that Ole Miss game at A&M, which I thought was they're in a really bad spot before that Ole Miss game, really bad. And then the Auburn game a couple weeks later. I thought they were all in. I thought the board of trustees and the donors and the people who, are invested in this program at that level, right? And by the way, it should be noted that investment in the program comes from all levels. It comes from the 12th man. It comes from the people writing those big checks. But there are a lot of stakeholders when it comes to college football programs, and especially A&M. And we shouldn't ignore the voices or mute the voices of those that, buy season tickets or come to one game a year or otherwise support the program. But knowing Ross's aggressiveness, look at the baseball hire. Look at, going after Jim Schlossnagle and getting a guy who wants to be in the toughest league in the country and go out there and battle for national championships and go to Omaha year after year, leaving a place where he was perfectly happy and content at TCU. I think that aggressiveness is something that could pay off in this coaching hire.
Tom, I think for me, and I don't want to steal too much from what Billy has said because I think we're on the similar wavelength, but the Ole Miss game, like, it's embarrassing, man. Like, as well, at one point I was very proud of him, right? But that's the price of admission. To me, like, you got to play hard. Like, I play tic-tac-toe. I try to win. Like, I don't care if I'm playing a 4-year-old or not. Like, everything, that's how I expect my athletes to compete. But they did play hard for Jimbo. There's no doubt about that. But you lose to Ole Miss in a game that could have been a blowout, and you fight all the way back. And then all the same reasons you've lost other games against a guy that had embarrassed your program on multiple occasions, talked bad to your players, talked bad about your head coach, about your traditions. And then you've gotten lost your last 5 Mississippi schools and 0-9 on the road and can't beat a ranked team on the road. All that stuff, to me, the vibe. And those people who make decisions, and this is a Billy line here, I'm stealing this one from Billy, they're fans too, right? Eventually, we get fed up. And I wanted to believe it was going to turn around because they did have Connor Wigman, right? But they had Connor Wigman coming into this season. Waiting one more year was no guarantee in this new world of college football with anybody on this roster.
David, my biggest question going forward, and I appreciate that, and what you just said about the big money donors being fans, I don't know that that's always a good thing because I don't think, and I think presidents are fans too.
Right.
Very rare is the president who acts pragmatically when it comes to coaching decisions. Most of them act and react emotionally because of the influence of their social circle and the money people who have influence on the program. I've heard many a story of presidents, getting schooled by agents and could have gotten a guy for X, and they at the last second get scared and they throw twice as much at him to try and convince him to be their head coach or to stick around or whatever that might be. So all of that, I think, is valid. The other part of it is, what is the timing of this hire? And how quickly do you act? Because, we've seen guys leave programs before the end of their season. Brian Kelly left before Notre Dame went to the postseason. I thought that was a trend, and I'm thinking back, the guy who took the Texas Tech job left his previous stop before the end of the season. I don't think that's good for the business. I don't think it's good for the game. But the type of coaches that A&M is going to go after are the coaches that are going to be playing at the very least on conference championship weekend, if not leading teams that are either in the playoff or borderline playoffs. So I think the timing would be find the right guy and let NIL help you out when it comes to recruiting, and let the portal help you out when it comes to recruiting, because I don't think you want to make a 5-year mistake because of a 5-week window. Take your time, make sure you get the right guy. Don't rush into this thing because you're afraid of what's going to happen with this class of players.
Tom, I appreciate you, sir. Thanks so much.
David, thanks. Great to see you. Better times ahead.
Yes, sir. Appreciate your time, man. Talk to you soon.
See you, bud.
See you, man. Tom Hart there on the Brian Foley Law Hotline, which is, by the way, something I'm going to talk about right now. He's a Tex hacker, Brian Foley. Yeah, you got to check him out for any needs that you have out there when it comes to just getting in trouble out there. He's been a longtime listener and subscriber of TexAgs. He's a board-certified lawyer. Only 7% of attorneys in Texas are qualified in that regard, and Brian is one of those. And we all make mistakes, right? You know, if you're here one weekend visiting your kids and, you have a couple too many pops out there and you get pulled over by a police officer and, they want you to do these roadside tests out there. The next thing you do after you've been under arrest is they try to suspend your driver's license, and you want to make sure that you get that back. Well, that's why you call Brian Foley Law, because he's done it. He's been through all the scenarios. He's worked as a prosecutor, and now he's defending folks out there. Good people can have a bad day. The next day you start by calling a criminal defense lawyer and a DWI lawyer in Brian Foley. If you or a loved one have been arrested or charged with a crime, you've probably filled with anxiety and fear. We know that feeling. Give Brian a call and start the process to take back your life. It is Brian Foley Law. They cover Houston, the Woodlands, Conroe, as well as College Station. Call him up right now. Brian Foley, not right now, when you're in trouble. Brian Foley Law, 936-596-0407. He answers with a personal touch. 936-596-0407 or brianfoleylaw.com.
we should be relevant on the national scene. Something is not clicking, something is not working, and therefore something had to give in order for Aggie football to reach our full potential. As leaders, every decision we make or every decision we don't make has consequences. Consistency in how the program operates on a daily basis impacts the confidence level of every single person in the program and thus influences performance. Based on my experience, the best programs have confidence, the program has an established identity, the program maximizes the talent, the leadership is fully integrated in the university, the athletics program, and its culture. I did not feel like we were meeting those standards of excellence and leadership.
Ross Bjork yesterday at the press conference talking about Jimbo Fisher's dismissing here on TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. It's the Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy Liucci is now joining us. By the way, we got a lot of new people watching us on YouTube. Hey, folks, thanks so much for watching us. Whatever fan base you're part of, thank you very, very much. If you can go ahead and subscribe to the channel, because we do talk a lot about college football on this show, and we welcome all fan bases out there. Billy, I know I was going to say your last 24 hours. It's been more than 24 hours. Your last week has been a roller coaster ride. I feel emotionally drained. I can only imagine the reporter in you, like the working on the phones, the relationships, like it's the commitments outside of this job itself because of your breaking news. It's probably been just a crazy few days for you.
It was a wild week, and I said, like I said it last night, I had also mix in some family stuff, and it's fine. Like I said, I don't need to. I would appreciate it, but I don't need to checking up on us stuff. Everything's good, but it was it was stressful. It was just added on a normal week. Those are added deals when you're like trying to cover games or whatever. But you combine it. This stuff's not fun, but there is like kind of an adrenaline thing of chasing down a story. Then I get the story, but then you are trying to juggle. I take a lot of offense. Like so many of these parents of kids at A&M listen, and they're awesome, wonderful. Like it's one of my favorite parts of the job is getting to know the families, the parents, and becoming in some cases lifelong friends with some of them. But even if they come and pass through, just great people to get to know. And I love how much they support their kids. It's just fun to see. Sometimes they even come in here, when their sons are doing interviews. And where I take great offense is when you have this week like it happens. And I say great offense. I guess not. I'm not like beside myself, but it is annoying. When you put a story out and you have people trying to go out of their way to like villainize the person that put the story out because, the kids found out via social media. If anyone ever knew, and there are a lot of people that do, and they over time they vouch for you, and that's why the reputation here is what it is. That's why, you're a lot of things you can say bad about me. One thing you can't say bad about me is that I don't consider other people this, everything that I do.
Yeah.
And especially in this instance. So it's a small group, but I like to give those people, I always like to look somebody in the eye and say, you don't know a damn thing about me. You don't know a damn thing about the process. You don't know a damn thing about what went on. My first and foremost concern was sitting there not wanting to let anything out prior to that game to affect. That was a fun night for those kids, for those players. They had a freaking blast. And in hindsight, it's like if that thing would have leaked out from me or anybody, and there was a part of me that still thought this can get stopped. And I'm not saying it should have been or shouldn't have been, but I'm saying the reporter in me was like, this could get stopped somewhere along the way. And I felt like as soon as I broke it and put it out, it wasn't. It was like that momentum was going to take on a life of its own. So I was very careful not wanting to be manipulated in any way in terms of the timing of it, and I was just wanting to see nature take its course, let's say, because there were people that were sitting there, or people I would talk to during the game that had an idea or knew and were saying, that they didn't agree with it, and people that mattered, in terms of, I think this should go one more year, and it was factoring in the contract, and they weren't just blindly supporting, but also, man, I'd like to see what would happen. With a healthy situation at quarterback, things like that. But that decision was made at the highest level, and that was kind of my thought was, I don't see that being walked back because of the level of decision it was. And Ross said, it was his recommendation to the president, and then they took it to the board. But you know how things go at a place like this. And yeah, it was Ross's recommendation, but the people at the very top had to sign off on that. And once they did, there was really no walking it back. But as someone sitting there, I was considering the timing of it. I was considering I would never want to say that before it was actually happening, and thinking through your head for a matter of a couple of days of like, what could thwart this? What are the percentages? And all of that stuff is, it takes a toll on you. Walking around that stadium that night, knowing what might happen, it takes a toll on you. But yeah, I mean, selfishly, I think long term it would hurt what we do, because it's not how we do things. It's not how we got to this point in terms of, what we're thought of. And some people don't like us because they don't like success. And I'm plenty of people more successful than us, but this has been a success here, and some people don't like that, and they hate it. And they hate it when you talk about things like we are right now. But part of how we get there is not thinking selfishly. So when someone said, and it's a small group, but I'm calling them out right now, if it's selfish, would have been announcing that and dropping it during college game day.
Yep.
When kids are sitting at the hotel and coaches are sitting there and their families are scrambling to get a hold of them, and and just to say, hey, let's get our name out there. You could shut down college game day right now. You could shut down SEC Nation with the whole college football world watching. No, I actually waited till I started seeing national people at 6:45 a.m. on a Sunday morning after being up till 3:45, kind of making phone calls, stressing, wringing my hands over it, because you want the story. I felt like me and we deserved the story because I'd had it from
the beginning,
from the inception of it. But at the same time, it meant a lot to me to make sure that it was done and there was no stopping it, and then B, I wanted Jimbo to know. And I think I was as positive as I could be that he knew before leaving that building Saturday night. I was as positive as I could be without calling him, thus interfering in the process. It was tough. It was all the way around. It was just, you do think about people. And look, here's the deal with Jimbo Fisher. And I thought long and hard about this. And Kevin Sumlin, I talked to Sumlin after he left, and, he made the comment, of the toll the job took on his health, his family, everything. So if he's mean to you in a presser one day 10 years ago and you haven't forgot it, it's like, come on, guys. But Jimbo, I'm thinking about the other night. Here's a guy that came up from, he's West Virginia, didn't have a lot, went to Samford to play football. He wasn't the 5-star recruit. Forget what you think about him. Think about the human here. Worked his way up to the peak of his profession, the absolute top, and was sitting there Saturday night and coaching in front of 100,000 people, doing what he loved, coaching football, 100,000 people literally in the arena, sitting there and not knowing that was going to be his last time to coach here. Not knowing, I don't know if Jimbo will ever coach again. I think he will. Is he even 60 yet?
No.
He loves it. But not knowing if he will again, not Maybe he does, but he never coaches at that type of, in that type of environment again. Maybe it's at a different level. Coach Fran never did.
Right.
Coach Fran ended up back at, Texas State. He never ascended back to this level. And you don't know that, and then all of a sudden he's fired, and everybody goes, well, he's got $75 million. I'm going to go sit on my farm in West Virginia and do nothing. And maybe that's what he does. But there is a human element to that I think we forget sometimes. It's not Jimbo, it's Arnett, it's Sam Pittman, it's anybody. It's Tom Herman, who came off as a big jerk during his whole time. It doesn't matter. But so he's got his $75 million, right? You think that guy didn't love his job? You think that guy wasn't devastated when he got the news? Do you think he didn't go home, and I don't know if he went home and cried or whatever, but you don't think his family's crushed? So to me, this is not like feel bad for Jimbo, but it is a little bit like, hey, in the moment, it's okay to kind of consider the human there that probably felt like, damn, I failed at what I was paid to do. I couldn't do the job. And it's tough. I mean, I'll tell you this. I was thinking about that though yesterday, and there's a family human side to that, not just for him, for Mark Robinson, for the assistant coaches, and think about, like, it's not just them, like, hey, you know what? You didn't recruit this player. You haven't developed these guys, or your defense gave up this much, or your offense hasn't, they've sucked. There are families involved too. And it is what it is. I'm not saying, you shouldn't fire coaches. Hell, of course you should. Of course you should. That's the sport. They are compensated very handsomely, more so than 99.9% of us in this world. But that doesn't change the fact that it's not really a day to celebrate when you make a change, even if the guy or the staff aren't winning as much as you want, or as much as they're, I think reasonably expected to. I think putting those expectations on Jimbo with that contract, with the extension, he had a great situation. You gave him everything he needed. And if you don't feel like the job's getting done, then by God, I absolutely think you should make a change, because he's not bigger than this program. Neither are the decision makers. Neither are we. Neither are, any one player. If somebody wants to transfer or whatever, it's just this machine, and this is why I think they need to be careful on who they hire. This thing, they don't have championships. We don't have trophies around here, in far too long. But I was just talking to McElroy and Cube. The expectations are absolutely reasonable. Expectations are not based on history. So if A&M historically hasn't won, like LSU, like Alabama, like Texas, USC, Miami, anyone, Notre Dame, OU, expectations have nothing to do with past history. Expectations to me have to do with what you want to achieve, what you are committing to achieve, facilities, salaries, NIL, all of it, fan support. Like, the expectation should be championships here. And you paid Jimbo to come in and win championships and compete for championships. And other than, 1 year there when they were competing for the playoffs, they really didn't compete for either in 6 years. So I get it. But on a day like today, like in yesterday, maybe skip the memes, maybe skip the jokes, and kind of take it as a serious thing, because it's a rough day for a lot of people.
Got to hit a break, but I was standing there with you on the sidelines, and it was just weird, like knowing what was coming, but hoping that we would get a great performance, and they did give us a great performance.
Yeah.
And at some point.
I said prior to the game that wasn't going to be enough.
Yeah.
And before that meeting, I felt bad vibes, bad energy coming out of Ole Miss in terms of, the wolves are circling.
Yeah.
Going into Ole Miss, it was like, man, the wind's blowing a certain direction. Tennessee really, when people go these road trips, they get you, man. When not all, but when it's on, when things are tense and when things are coming to a head, you know, you go out to UCLA and you lose a game like that when people travel across the country and they book trips. And I'm talking about people. I mean the people that really matter, who the decision makers. You go out there and you fire up the PJ and spend all that money to go out to LA, and it's year 6 and you blow that kind of lead to a non-power program. You go and do it, you know, at Miami this year, but especially when you go do it at Tennessee and you walk away. And I kept saying, when you can see that you should have won the game and you can see that it was your mistakes that cost you the game, and in some instances in Knoxville, I would say your own ineptitude, and I mean across the board, I think it makes it actually more frustrating.
Yeah, let's hit a break here. If your organization or business is looking for an opportunity to engage with Aggies, then you need to check out the Association of Former Students. They are so good. But as a reminder, beyond doing that, guys, you've got Pass It Back Day tomorrow. We're going to have a lot of coverage here on TexAgs Radio. The Association of Former Students annual 24-hour Day of Giving. It's a day to celebrate everything that means to be an Aggie and show the power of the Aggie Network, what they can accomplish. And they need your help to reach their goals of 2,800 donors. Know that your support will help continue in the oldest, most inspiring tradition of Aggies helping other Aggies out there. Your gift and support will help programs provide the resources and cultivate the experiences for that Aggie network. You'll make an impact on the Corps of Cadets, the Texas Aggie Band, Aggie Muster, local A&M clubs, student organizations, and much more. You'll be able to help provide scholarships and student assistance programs. Please consider making a gift every day, but tomorrow especially with Pass It Back Day by visiting tx.ag/giving or calling 979-845-7514. If you've already been given to the association this year, you can still participate. Consider making a second gift or give on someone's behalf, or encourage others that have not given before to donate. It is the Association of Former Students. TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy's still with us. He'll be with us through the remainder of the show. Billy, was there a point where you were like, I don't think
Good
this
to
is...
see you Friday. Any news on who's replacing Jimbo Fisher? These are the type texts I get yesterday.
I love people who I haven't heard from in years. All of a sudden, hey, man, they start fishing for information. I love that. Like, hey, man, so what are you doing? What are you working on?
Yeah.
Total, yeah, that happens. Was there a point where you're like, I don't think this is going to work?
The good thing is you can say, I know nothing.
I do know
and
nothing.
mean it.
God, thanks for making me look bad. Just for that?
Oh, you know a lot. I'm giving you a
I purposely allow you to be the star. Just
well,
kidding.
you also no, you're the star. You have 15 hours a day on that. I mean, a week on that mic. I could not handle that. My voice couldn't handle that. My mind couldn't handle that.
You know, sometimes my mind can't handle
sleep couldn't handle that.
Ask certain people. I'm not professional at this job, apparently. Hey, let's. Is there a point? This is probably an unfair question for you, but was there a point where you're like, I don't think this is going to work? And I know Ole Miss was a tipping point for the university.
You're hearing a short list of names already.
This is the text you're getting?
I could just read these.
Do it.
That would be fun.
Text. Liucci text. Let's go.
Barrett Salee, RIP Sumlin graphic.
I heard you with him yesterday.
I did tell him that. I said, can you stop with the Sumlin graphic?
Yep.
And finally retire it. The thing is the thing about that graphic, it was annoying as hell, and it wasn't just him putting it out there, it was everyone, but it wasn't, there were people that would fall into that, see, they shouldn't have fired someone, that rabbit hole, for whatever reasons they wanted for saying that. If they wanted to try to make A&M look bad in some way, I always thought I always thought if you thought that when you looked at that, you'd had an agenda or you were stupid. I don't know which one. That wasn't the point of it, or it shouldn't have been. If you want to say A&M is continuing to spin its wheels no matter who they bring in there, and now all they've done is just spend a lot more for the same result, that doesn't mean that Kevin Sumlin should be in year 12 here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what we all know what it means is that A&M is still A&M. And
right.
They can go spend all the money in the world and they haven't changed that. So they really need to make a good hire this time. I really liked I really liked the message Josh Pate has been saying about A&M in the last 24 years. It is a tremendous job. And you can win massively here.
Yeah.
But you got to find the right guy, and they haven't. And I look around like, the weird thing is A&M hasn't really been deep in the doldrums, these dark ages. And you hope they're not going there. And that's what, when you think of this hire, you go, I hope they don't go there, where go from Sumlin didn't work, Jimbo didn't work. Now there's a really bad hire. Now it really gets dark. But the reality is, most coaches can come in here with what they're given and do this 7-5, 8-4, occasional 9-3 thing.
Right.
I really believe that. I believe most coaches can come in here and do that. Recruiting base, proximity to Houston, Dallas, East Texas, the ability to recruit now throughout the South with the SEC brand behind you. The game day environment, 100-something thousand at Mississippi State or against Mississippi State. You can come in here and do that, but I do think, you're trying to get past all that. A&M really needs this hire to hit, because you see programs like that have a lot more history going through way more dark periods than A&M has. So the Aggies are not. They're not this is going to be probably a 7-5 team, if not an 8-4, with a ton of talent. I know some of it's going to go out the door during a transition. I think a lot of it was going to happen anyway, and that was a big part of the concern. But you look at OU, you look at Texas, you look at Alabama, people forget. You look at LSU pre-Nick Saban, you look at USC around Pete Carroll, before and after. It happens everywhere. You look at Miami since their dynasty. You look at Florida State. It's happened to everyone. And Michigan went through it. They had some hires in a row there. So this is really important for Ross, the decision makers, to get this one right, because it is not bare, it is not barren, it is not at rock bottom. In fact, if you go get the right guy and get him quickly, and don't give me this crap. You want to come back? Because I'm going to tell you what crap I don't want to be given.
All right,
I don't want to hear. And if I do, I'm going to be really concerned and frustrated.
When we come back, we won't have that much time, but we will certainly
talk
do it.
crap, though.
We'll talk crap. In fact, no live spot for now. We'll bring it back later. It's TexAgs Radio. TexAgs Radio, what's crap? That's how you teased it last segment, Billy. I don't want any of that crap. I forgot.
I think here's one. I'm going to read you something funny. That Board told Jimbo last night it was happening. He stormed out of the locker room and left for the ranch. Staff was left confused. It's not true. There's a lot that's not true that I get. What's crap is, what were you talking about? What was crap, by the way?
I think you're talking about the next hire. And then
don't give me this thing that, like, hey, we need a really strong coach and he needs to be organized and go attend, and I also go attend the all staff meetings with the head coaches meetings here at A&M and be friends with everyone. I think that is something to certainly put on your list that you desire and want, but that if you're saying good ball coach and someone easy to get along with and work with and well liked, save that. Have that on the list. There are plenty of people that can check that box and check the coaching box and recruit lights out, or at least put a staff around them that can recruit lights out. Even better if the head coach is a closer and someone, but you better be fully committed to the art of recruiting. You better not tell me that, well, there's NIL and there's the portal, because everyone you're trying to beat is playing that game, and everyone you're trying to beat puts elite players on the field. And there is a job at hand from the day this person is hired, and right now Elijah Robinson and all those other coaches are doing it. As big a part of the job as anything is keeping as much of this team together as you can, because if you do, you have a winner day one.
Buzz Williams next. All right, we're back. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. David Nuño, Billy Liucci in studio here in the Rollo Insurance Studio. Texas A&M Hoops is headed to SMU tomorrow after an impressive road win over Ohio State on Friday night. Let's talk to the head coach all about it. Buzz Williams joining us here on the Brian Foley Law Hotline. Buzz, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning.
Morning, buddy.
So let's talk about this, the Ohio State game. Big road victory, quad one. Just talk about the way your team put it together, especially down the stretch of the end of that one.
Yeah, I thought there was great competitive charisma, synergy for the first week to be in that sort of environment against that type of an opponent. Was a lot of lessons. It was a lot of fun, obviously, with the result, but there were a lot of good things that hopefully we can build on. Obviously, it's a quick turnaround. SMU's already played 3 games. They played 3 games last week. They're the fastest team thus far that we've ever played since we've been here. So they bring a completely different type of problem than what we did against Ohio State. And so today's prep, our guys were good yesterday. And before we get on the bus to head that away, we need to be really good again today.
Buzz, you just made me think of a question. This is why I like talking to you. I sometimes have to go off. As you know, there's no script in front of me, but sometimes I have to go off script. When you talk about the speed that SMU's playing with, right? When you put together schedules, and this year the schedule's been talked about so much, but when you're putting together, obviously – You've referenced before, this is a learning process in the kind of ever-moving target that is the postseason.
Yep.
But throughout your career, do you look for specifically opponents where you kind of get a wide variety of challenges and styles of play in preparation for not only conference play, but I think maybe most notably the postseason? Like when you're looking at these teams, are you looking at, I like playing a team like this because they're going to challenge us in this regard, or let's go do – is that the way you look into it, or is it kind of just who can we get when?
Yeah, the dates obviously always play a factor. And over the last 3 to 5 years, as the net has replaced RPI and all of those things, that's completely changed the model of how the schedule at this level. And truthfully, Liucci, I don't know. You could probably do some research. I don't know how many teams in Power 5 are going to play back-to-back road games in the first week of the season. I don't know if that's smart. I do think that there is some stylistic things that if everything is fine with the first part of my answer, it does prepare you because it gives you a rep of what's coming, or if it's coming again, you can go back to these clips, you can go back to this report, you can go back to the things that you did in practice in the film room in preparation for that opponent. Obviously, we played SMU last year, and the portal has changed also in some ways how teams play based on who they acquire. But there is some Bill Belichick, each game, how do we win this game? What is the scout? What is the prep in order to win this game? Versus we're going to play this style no matter who we play against. Like, I understand it's a small sample size in that SMU has only played 3 games, but the 3 games of data that we have this year are diametrically opposed to how they played last year.
Okay.
And so now you go back to some of our returns. I'm telling you now, who they were last year in roster is not the same.
Okay.
How they're playing, not the same. There's very little carryover. So I do think that in a perfect world, sure, some of that, like some of the teams that if you want to play a zone, you play Syracuse when Coach Boeheim was there. Like, if you want to play Princeton, you play Air Force. Like, there's for sure some of that.
Yeah.
But this team tomorrow is completely different than the team we played last year, and the prep required to play at Ohio State versus SMU is completely different. And so that change is also healthy. Like, hey, that's over. We did really good in a lot of ways, but here's what we got to do for the next one. And so that rep that translates through the rest of the year for sure.
Buzz, a couple of things that caught my attention stats-wise in the Ohio State game was you took on a very big Ohio State team, but you out-rebounded them, and also the lack of turnovers by your team. Certain things take a while to develop, but when it comes to protecting the ball and also to getting after the boards, that is not something. That's just a mindset.
Well, if we can have those numbers the rest of the way, we will be in a lot of games. I'm not saying we will win, but we had a very, very low turnover rate. We turned it over 7% of the time. If any team, that number is single digits. That is very good, because if you don't turn it over, it means you're getting a shot. And for us, if you get a shot, if you miss it, and we miss a lot, we have a chance to get a rebound. But it also means that you have a chance to get fouled. And getting fouled, doing a good job on the glass, those are all byproducts of we got to get the ball on the rim. And if you turn the ball over, you don't get a chance to get fouled, and you don't get a chance to get an offensive rebound. So there is some compound effect in your question that were both really good for us. And in the first half, we were really, really good on the glass. In the second half, it was a push. They did a much better job, and we didn't do as good a job as we need to do. But the physicality of the game was it did not seem like it was the first week of November. It felt like it was the third week in February. And so that is good, because we need that to be part of the fabric of who we are going forward for sure.
Talking to Buzz Williams here on TexAgs Radio. Buzz, what about the way Wade finished that game himself? He struggled shooting at some point, but then he really turned it on when it mattered most.
Yeah, he has a winner gene, and you would have to do DNA testing to find out with all the players. But like, I did not think he played really well, to be honest. I didn't think Boots played very well, to be honest. But those two guys are so critical to our success. And because of their history and because of who they are and their work ethic and their consistency and diligence in continuing to be an everyday guy, they play. And we'll live with the results, good and bad. And, like, you can kind of tell, like, when Boots started getting downhill, it's like, there's Boots. Good to see you. And even when Ford was struggling in the first half, like, you just think that the next possession is going to be fine. And, like, he made a lot of plays that you can't coach that were winning plays in a really tough environment that without those plays, we don't have a chance to win.
Buzz, I hear you talk, and I see what you're saying with Wade and Boots, and you shoot 3 of 18 from 3, and
yeah, those guys make 2 of 15.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah, right. But you go on the road and you talk about that winning DNA, and we obviously see it in Wade, but this whole team, like, where do you? It's a long season. I know you can't just sit there and dwell on anything good or bad. But on the proud versus we got a lot of work to do scale this early in the year, where were you sitting coming home? Because that is a hard-earned, meaningful road win, and I think just kind of a tone. It could serve as anyway a tone setter for this, which should be a really fun and challenging pre-SEC schedule. But where were you sitting when you're on that plane coming home? Besides probably sitting there watching the game, which I'm sure you do the whole flight.
I mean this genuinely. It's not coach speak.
Yeah.
I have great, genuine love for the people in our group. I thought Henry Coleman was just an absolute granimal. I think he has matured at a rate that is very, very difficult to find. I thought H, for a guy who hasn't started back-to-back games in his college career, had an incredible first week of the season. I think Jace has all of the right intangibles that are important to us. I think Eli, like, he's just a microwave. You put him in, and it's like he's about to score. I think Mo is starting to gain the consistency on a daily basis that we want from him. Andy Garcia may shoot one ball, maybe a ball and a half, but you can't take him off the floor because he impacts the game in so many ways that are not in a stat sheet. I think Solo was great on Monday, really struggled with foul trouble at Ohio State, but it's not a player. Moore's an easy guy to talk to because he's so lovable and he's so fun to watch. Boots is the guy that you just count on day after day. Like, you almost take him for granted sometimes, but I really think it's the collection of all of those guys. And I think that the words that were being said during timeouts, the words that I heard from the bench, for it to be the first week of the season in that sort of environment, it was very mature. And I think the relationships that these guys are building and how they have incorporated them, how they've incorporated Jace and Eli and Wildens. I mean, two of those guys did nothing this summer for different reasons. They weren't a part of the practices. They weren't a part of the Bahama trip. And I think it speaks to the character of each person and the families that they represent, that we're doing our best at an accelerated rate to try to make this a family. And so, I'm giving them dap, and I'm giving them high fives on the plane. It's a 3-hour flight home. I don't sleep the night before a game or the night of a game. So, I get tired of watching games all the time, and I never start my prep for the next game until the next day because I don't want to dull out the lessons that need to come from a win or a loss. So I start studying Ohio State on the way home because I know I got to start on SMU Saturday morning. But I'm just happy for them, and it's a genuine happy. It's not an arrogant look at me, we won, I'm the coach. I'm kind of past all of that at this point in my career, but for those guys to be able to experience that this early, to your point, I hope it's a segue to a lot of other good things along the way.
That is Buzz Williams. Buzz, thanks so much for the time. We'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate it, buddy, as always.
Buzz Williams on the Brian Foley Law Hotline.
I think I'm going to head to Dallas tomorrow.
Yeah.
There and back, because I'm going back up Friday for the concert. So I'm really pissed. George Strait's Friday has been planned for months, and I'm really pissed because I'm not going to be at Reed to see Oral Roberts, and that's a game I'm excited about as well. I mean, this schedule is ridiculous.
It's a great schedule.
But, I'm looking forward to the home schedule. I'm looking forward to one thing I do plan on doing this year too is getting to a road SEC game. I don't think I've been to a road regular season SEC basketball game in quite some time.
Yeah.
I think it was LSU like years ago. I mean, I've been obviously ton of the postseason. Even it's harder with football, but a couple of the preseason tournaments along the way. But especially, almost all the postseason and NCAA stuff, some SEC, Big 12 tournaments. It was easier, when you're playing conference games, Baylor, Texas. Whoever, Tech, TCU, not TCU, but hadn't been to a road SEC game, I don't think, in a while. And even when I say LSU, that was back when
they weren't in the SEC.
They weren't in the SEC.
Yeah. All right. We'll hit a break. We'll come back with more. Right now, we're talking Caldwell Country Chevrolet. Drove right by it yesterday. I was on my way back and forth from Austin. Drove right by Caldwell Country Chevrolet there on Highway 21. Also, you can find them online at caldwellcountrychevrolet.com. that is the place to go when you're looking for a new vehicle, right? So when you're in that stressful situation where you're trying to find the right car for your family, the needs that you have, the price point that you need to find, and also try to consider what your car is going to be worth, the one you're trying to trade in, consider Caldwell Country Chevrolet. They know how to help you. If you purchase a vehicle there, they're going to help you every step of the way, and they're the place to go to when we have questions too, right? You have a certain question on, this is my need. They will help you find that need. If they don't have it on their lot, they usually can find it for you. It is a great place to go. We bought our vehicle there, a Chevy Tahoe there just about a year and a half ago. It's been a great, great purchase with the amazing customer service. They are a great place to go because they are Aggie owned, and they are operated by Aggies, and they also care about this Aggie community. No doubt about that. Fully support the Aggie athletics out there. So check out the website. They're located on Highway 21 in Caldwell and online. Caldwell Country Chevrolet. 15-minute drive, the edge of Bryan to the edge of Caldwell. When you go there, you're going to experience the difference at Caldwell Country Chevrolet.
After we met with Coach Fisher, I immediately asked Elijah Robinson to serve as interim coach for the last 2 games, the transfer and recruiting period and the bowl game. As reported, Elijah accepted, and I really look forward to supporting him. He's a great coach, a great leader, and the young men in our program really look up to him in so many ways. We then met with the football staff, talked about coaching, supporting our players, and making sure that they fulfill their obligation too as Aggie football coaches. Around 11 a.m. we were gathering the team. The team obviously had already heard the news, so that was unfortunate, but nothing we could control. And so they were gathering around, and around 11 a.m. I told the players that it was my job to make the decisions that are best interest of the university and to put them in the best position to succeed and provide the resources and the leadership to make all that happen. I told the players that based on our high standards here at A&M, that was not happening.
All right, that was Ross Bjork yesterday, and a big part of what he was talking about there, obviously, about Elijah Robinson's TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy, Elijah's got the support of the players, and I think anybody who's come in contact with Elijah knows what kind of dude he is. To me, he was the logical choice. I understand what some people thought, maybe Durkin, maybe Petrino because of their head coaching experience. But I think for this group of young men where we are, I think he was the perfect pick.
Yeah, I love it. He deserves it. Players are going to be happy with it. I think the other coaches on the staff, including Petrino and Durkin, will really respect that decision, and they'll work great with him and for him for a couple weeks here. And I mean, the other thing is Elijah is somebody that, I say a couple weeks. I mean, this could be fun for Elijah, and this could be a great audition for him, not only around here but for anywhere.
Anywhere.
And I'm telling you, man, there are people in this profession that are real ones that deserve it. And in a sport where a lot of people, and it's alpha this, alpha that, and you need to yell and scream and get your point across, and you need to, be a big badass football coach. Even what I mean by big, I mean, sometimes it's the smaller ones that have the biggest bark. But Elijah's just Elijah, and he's real, and he's lovable. He'll put his arm around a kid and give him a hug when he needs it. He'll show the love, but he's also going to coach and get it out of you and push you and make you better and have a high expectation and expect you to meet that expectation. His position group, hard-working dudes that they play with intensity, they play with passion, they play with toughness. But it extends out to the other. He's just there's a reason he's paid as much as he is to be a position coach. They could not afford to lose him, and it goes so far beyond the recruiting, but he's also an absolutely elite recruiter. And guess why he's that? I go back to what I said. He's a real dude. He's a real person. He's somebody that both kids and parents and coworkers, fellow staffers, he's loved in that building. And I go back to what I said at the very beginning. He deserves it. So I'm really happy for him. And just I think he can motivate these guys to play
and keep them around, right?
Well, that's the whole second part of this, and it of everyone on that staff that you want to keep, no matter who your next head coach is, it's Elijah Robinson. Period. It doesn't mean like it can't work without Elijah.
Sure,
I've seen this too many times. You can't get too caught up on one assistant coach, one player during a transition. But I think it would be incredibly important and incredibly beneficial to the next coach if Elijah Robinson is a prominent member of that staff. I mean, I think that I can't even put into words how significant that would be in terms of keeping guys here, in terms of ongoing recruiting efforts, in terms of just, again, like I said, putting together the right staff with the right character and personalities. If you're starting off and it's anchored with that initial hire, it'd be massive. And look, I said it yesterday, the connection there between Elijah and Terry Price. I would have said the same damn thing about TP when Kevin Sumlin got fired and Jimbo Fisher came in and was able to retain Terry Price. And that was and I know it didn't work at the end of the day when we're talking about a firing, but they did almost get it there. And we all know what TP's value was on the recruiting trail, in that staff room, in Bright, in that program. And Elijah is the exact same way. And I think in the case of Elijah, when we're talking about one of the best recruiters and position coaches, regardless of position in the country.
Well, And that's talking long-term, keeping Elijah.
Yeah.
But just for the short term, I think having these guys want to go out and play for somebody like him, go win these next 2 games, stay for a bowl game and play for Elijah. I think, who knows what young men are thinking, but I think he's the kind of guy that gives us the best chance there too.
No question about it. No question about it. And I'd love nothing more. How cool would it be to see Elijah go 3-0, go beat LSU in Baton Rouge, and go win a bowl game, and this team get to 9? You know, I mean, again, all of these things are important in terms of retention, in terms of setting the coach on the path to win right away. Because sometimes you go, hey, that roster's not, it's not barren, it's not depleted. That's what happens a lot of times when a new coach gets somewhere. You have the potential to say, whoever's walking in there has a loaded roster, absolutely loaded, like Bama, Ohio State, Georgia level loaded, LSU level loaded from day one. I don't think we're going to quite be able to say that because of the damn portal nowadays and all the transition. But you get the right guy in here quickly and with the help of Elijah. And I'm going to tell you something, like DJ Durkin's a hell of a recruiter, and he is a pro's pro. He is a professional. Another guy that's loved in the building, another guy that's doing a great job on the recruiting trail, and that's not going to half-ass it because the head coach got fired. And there's others in there as well. But, I mean, guys like that really stand out. And between that and making a quick hire, you have the potential to retain a lot of this. And then you will lose some. There's just no two ways around it. And you will lose some guys you want to keep, and they'll make a big deal of it on social media. But if you hire the right coach, again, I go back to that recruiting thing and that element of being able to quickly sit down in a room and sell with excitement what you're going to have going here. If you can do that, you can have a contending team from day one at Texas A&M.
So when this has to happen fast, obviously, but when we talk fast, what does that mean? Does that mean by the end of this week they're already talking to people? No.
Well, yeah, for sure. I think, you'd love to see it wrapped up in a couple weeks' time. Like, from the end of Mississippi State to the end of LSU's 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. You'd love to see that.
Yeah.
You'd love to see by the middle of that week after LSU you have some. Why is it that every little twosome that walks by this window, I've noticed, and maybe I've got a weird thinking brain, the last 3 duos that have walked by and kind of looked in and
Brandon,
smiled away,
Josh, Jamie.
they are the exact same height.
Oh, I didn't know.
Like Brandon and Josh look like 2 little clones, and now Jamie and the Bees walk by, and they're like exactly the same height, just floating by that window.
Who's my height here? I'm going to go out there and walk.
And you're going to do it just to troll me, aren't you?
Yeah, but probably. I know. Look, the candidate list that's out there, that's just people speculating everywhere, and they're going to go through their due diligence. But has there been a name that maybe has been floated to you? Like, I hadn't thought of that. That's interesting perspective.
No.
Like Cliff has been mentioned.
Cliff. I mean, I think Cliff's a really interesting one. I mean, I'm not sitting here like I'd want him here for personal reasons. Just he's a longtime buddy, but you look, and that's again like, oh yeah, go get Lanning, go get Dan Campbell, go get DeBoer, what he's doing right now at Washington. Those are highly unlikely. But if you start talking about these other candidates, I like a lot about Elko. I like a lot. And the Cliff one is one of the more intriguing ones. Somebody mentioned Todd Monken. He's doing great work right now with the Ravens and Lamar Jackson. He won a couple of national titles with Stetson Bennett at Georgia. He's had a long history, as a coach. None of these, names, if I say, okay, let's take them and that's the guy and let's leave it alone. But there are some that like a Cliff, Monken's name came up, like, oh, that's interesting. Another guy, and again, I'm just throwing names up because people, by the way, if you're sitting there, it's amazing what we can do in a day, and by the end of the day, they're going, well, it really doesn't sound very clued in. It sounds like they're keeping. It's day one, and I've told y'all, which I'm trying to do, always try to do, is tell y'all exactly what's happening, and exactly what's happening is there is not one standalone candidate. There are not two or three. There is a list. You know, like I mean, I list by a list. I mean, like let's start paring this down, and they're going to use that search firm that A&M is contracted out to, not just football, but A&M. They're going to use that for kind of a template, kind of like to kind of weed out a lot of it so you can kind of narrow it down. But there's no one or two guys sitting at the top of a list right now. And that'll happen quickly, though. But as of Monday morning after a Sunday morning firing, that's not the case. And I know people say, every AD walks around with a list in his pocket. Well, yeah, Ross probably has a list of guys, but there's also, this is different because of the money you're paying Jimbo versus what you do. This is a little bit different, and I think it's time to take a step back for a matter of what I mean is a couple days and talk to the right people around here that can help Ross make the decision and start to say, okay, what are we looking for? Which direction are we going to go outside of someone kind of coming in and us looking up one day and going, damn, we have a real chance. All those guys that I mentioned are going to get calls. Do you think they're not going to just kind of talk to Dan and maybe they're getting some advice on who they should hire and if they get any kind of feel that I've said my piece on that one. But I was thinking this, if we're a year ago, two things, like Mike Elko, if he hadn't left to Duke, he is the perfect, promote that guy to head coach guy. Like that's what OU did with Lincoln Riley. That's Notre Dame with Freeman. That's, all these places where you said, oh, that's the guy. He's promoted. Right. He's the head guy. That's what Clemson would have done with Brent Venables had he not gone to OU. What you've got, though, is even better because now you have Mike Elko with 2 years of head coaching, Power 5 experience. So there's the Elko thing. But let me ask you this. If he would not – there's one person I keep looking at and I go, I don't know where I feel. I haven't really dove into it, but had Luke Fickell not taken the Wisconsin job last year and he had just been at Cincinnati one more year, would Luke Fickell be the guy that every A&M fan was saying that's who you need to hire?
Yes, 100%.
So he's still that same coach. He's just 1 year into it, and I don't know if he'd even come. I don't know if A&M – but, I mean – I'm just saying.
That profile.
When we think about these things, don't forget about stuff like that.
Yeah. That's a good point right there. All right, we'll hit a break. When we come back, I've got a question for you, what you think ultimately did in Jimbo's time here. Plus, let's talk Jalen Henderson. What a performance. We'll get into that next. Right now, though, we're talking about Heritage Films. The website is yourheritagefilm.com. Let's get a documentary done about your family. Time is precious, and you don't know if you got tomorrow. You don't know if your loved ones have tomorrow, so make sure you're calling them and checking them in on them often. And also, let's tell their story. Let's honor them by knowing your grandfather's story, how World War II was, how your family moved to the United States, how the family business was started in a documentary form. That's what Chance McClain does. He does these movies for families, family businesses, family ranches, and just good old boys out there. He'll tell your story, and he'll do it at the top level. It's so good. He's so creative and very artistic out there. That's one option you can do with Heritage Films. You can also do the Year Flicks, which is where you do a 20-minute video, a Q&A for the youngers out there. We did one for Annalise, my daughter. Got to know her a little bit on a different level. He asked some questions, and some were fun, some were about her likes or dislikes. We'll follow up that video in a couple years and find out where she's kind of evolved. You can do it with your freshman year of college, your sophomore year, finish it off with junior and senior year. Now you get this 4-part, 20-minute story for each of these chapters. It's done at a high level. You'll love it. The website is yourheritagefilm.com, yourheritagefilm.com, 713-893-8341, 713-893-8341. Welcome back in. TexAgs Radio presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. Billy, I kind of teased it earlier. What do you think ultimately did in Jimbo's time here? Like, why did it not work? He had all the resources. He had all the talent. Was it he just didn't evolve with the game, do you think what it was?
I think I'm part of that, but he certainly tried, in terms of like the recruiting and the the portal and NIL but offensively was slow too, for sure. But there was a lot. I think if I had to really, I think I maybe tried to do too much of it on his own, and that's really hard to do. It's really hard to do, and I think a lot of times coaches maybe don't realize that until they sit back and kind of really take stock. Some personalities and people want to do everything on their own because they believe in what they can do, and most times it's because that person is, talented maybe in a way that a lot of the people around them aren't. And then also if it works for you, you kind of go, this worked. Mm-hmm. The way I did this worked at Florida State. It worked. I saw it work for Nick Saban at LSU, where I was a big part of that, and it worked for us there, and it worked for me at Florida State. But college football is so unique in how much it seems to change, like almost like every 5 years, whether it be the rules, whether it be the style of play, whether it be things like now the portal and the NIL and all these things. Like it's ever evolving, realignment, ever evolving, it's ever changing. And I do think there comes time where it's not that you're not evolving with it, but I'm talking about just a specific of his way works, and he is a guy that likes to do so much of it, not on his own, but his way, but also this has worked for me. Mm-hmm. And it's, if he wants to air up this football, refill, go get his own, refill that coffee, do that, do this, do the show, and it kind of leads to, I think, over time, like other people aren't like content to take a back seat, but you go, okay, well, I mean,
right.
And I don't think, you look and they don't have a recruiting coordinator again yet. That they never added that. They haven't really had a high school relations guy that they've made a couple hires, but and then when they've gotten up there, we never even heard of them, and they weren't out there. And and it's just, I think a lot of that is what ultimately gets a lot of coaches. Because if it works, and I also think the other thing that got him was, there was some misfortune with those quarterback injuries. And I know some of it is, again, and also with the hiring of assistant coaches, as they've come and gone, you have to wonder, has that declined over the time here? Is the caliber of that staff? And I'm not talking about any one individual, but you got to look at it and ask that question. I don't know the answer, but even if it's at 3 positions, they've gotten worse. Well, then you gotten worse, So I think some of it though has been bad fortune. Yeah. I mean, it's real. People don't like hearing that, but it's real. Like if certain quarterbacks don't get hurt, they win more. When he had that veteran football team with that senior quarterback, they were one of the 5, 6 best, if not better, teams in college football that season. Oh, it was a COVID season. They would have been really damn good in a regular season. They might have been better. They might have been better to have that time to get some of more of those young guys up to speed with spring ball and a fall camp. And so, no, I think there was some real misfortune there. For example, people talk about that COVID year and, Clemson not having Trevor Lawrence to play Notre Dame, I've talked about a lot, but A&M had the layout to be the second best team in the SEC that season. They had what was in place to be this, behind Bama, obviously. That was the year Bama won it, right? That was Bama winning it. They had a team and the quarterback, the veteran, senior, steady Eddie, that could do that. who's to say if Ohio State would have played more games, they wouldn't have fallen out with a loss somewhere along the way. You know, A&M would have been 12-1. They would have, you know, we've talked about who would have replaced Tennessee and Florida on the schedule. That would have been a 12-1 football team. Ohio State loses one game, A&M's in there, and Ohio State played, 6? So the COVID thing actually hurt A&M that season, and it hurt in what Jimbo thought was going to be his best team yet. That was in year 3. And then just, I think they asked me earlier this morning, Mac and Cube, like what defined his, you know, how would you kind of describe his tenure? And part of it was really close, couldn't quite get over. And there's a million reasons why. And that's part of, you know, I think what got him to is there were a million reasons why. It wasn't just one. It wasn't just quarterback injuries. It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't. So that, you know, when you can say that, you understand, like, man, it would have been hard for this to flip back around and work. I think they with the way it was set up and the way it was going, when they're putting together that number 1 class, had they finished off that 2021 season in style, and by in style I mean 10-2. You know, yeah, they lost to Mississippi State and they lost to Arkansas in those back-to-back weeks, but they recovered and they were trending way up. And I think had they gotten that, just little things too. Maybe you get a Kelvin Banks and Terrence Brooks or another corner, and then maybe the next year you get and Perk. You know, maybe you get those 3 guys, and all of a sudden you got Perk and Edger and Cooper at linebacker the last couple seasons, and you got, you know, Tyreek Chappelle and Terrence Brooks or another second-year corner that was what you were kind of threw up a hope and a prayer that Denver Harris would be because he had the talent, or Smoke Bowie. But, you know, maybe you had a guy that did pan out because you finished 10-2 and you had momentum. So, and Kelvin Banks, you know, if he was in year 2 as an All-American tackle, how much different does your O-line look? So I think that was the moment, dropping those road games, when you look back and you go, that was your chance. That was when it could have flipped. That's when the culture could have flipped. That's when the mindset of, we come to A&M to win. We come to A&M to win New Year's 6 bowl games and collect trophies. That's what we do here. And we're building towards a championship. And we know what we did these 2 years, and now we need to carry it on. And the biggest thing was you would have done that with a different quarterback than you did the year before, which would really have sold the fact that, hey, this is a program now. This is what happened. They couldn't, you know, we can go back to those 2 games and you think of how they lost them. LSU was, you know, absolute crap with that call. Right. The crazy irony here is you lost to Max Johnson. And who knows, maybe he'll go back to Baton Rouge in a couple weeks and kind of bring this thing full circle by beating them, or it might be. I think it's unlikely. I wouldn't rule it out, but I right now I'm pretty damn excited about the idea of Jalen Henderson going there and trying to get it done.
Let's talk about him on the next side of the break. All right, right now we're talking Costa Vida. If you haven't been there recently, it's been a minute. You got to go check it out. Go say hi to Holly and the crew out there. The food is fantastic. If you go for the morning breakfast out there, so you can get your meetings done there, right? You get your crew out there. Hey, let's have a meeting. We'll have a bunch of coffee and some breakfast tacos. You can do that at Costa Vida and have a good meeting, great meal, and feel really good about it. Then if you want to stay for lunch or dinner, whatever it may be, you know you're getting the best food out there. The Fresh Mex is done the right way. It tastes so good where every ingredient matters out there. Fresh and scratch made. And remember, every ingredient does matter out there. You can choose your entree, the burrito, the salad, the enchiladas, the tacos, the quesadilla, the baja bowl, the nachos. If you want to choose a particular type of protein from sweet pork, the raspberry chipotle chicken, the shrimp grilled chicken, and steak, the cheese, the veggies out there, and top it with your favorite house sauces out there. It's so, so good. And the signature dishes from the quesadillas, the shrimp tacos, the chips and queso, the raspberry chipotle chicken. Really a good place to go for whatever meal you're looking for, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And remember, they're open for dine-in, through curbside, takeaway, DoorDash, you name it. Remember Costa Vida for all your catering needs out there. Aggie owned and operated, 4501 Mills Park Circle in College Station. 4501 Mills Park Circle in South College Station is Costa Vida. Final segment of the program, TexAgs Radio, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Rollo Insurance Studio. We can go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center in a minute, but now that Billy is available, Billy, I do want to at least get a few minutes. This would have been the lead all show long had we not had a coaching change, but Jalen Henderson's performance there, just...
Yeah, I feel like you're talking like we haven't talked about it, and we haven't on radio, but we certainly spent a lot of time yesterday. That was awesome. I mean, look at him. 11-19, 150, 60 rushing yards, and that's with a couple sacks mixed in there, and 4 touchdowns.
Just look poised, man.
4 touchdowns, no turnovers. He looked poised. He played fast. He was having fun. Terrific when he'd run the ball in both the design and the ad lib. He had, he missed a couple touchdown passes that I'm sure he'd love to have back. That, I mean, he could have had 5 or 6 touchdowns accounted for. He overthrew Ja'Day Walker on one, and then after a really nice way to get out of pressure, had a chance to hit somebody. I forget who it was in that corner of the end zone on the Mississippi State side, but
86 points the last 2
he
weeks.
had chances. Man. He had chances, but they were created chances. He's a creator. The players seemed to elevate their level around him. They seemed really excited to play with him. I love the energy he brought. I love the tempo that they seemed to play with, and they did some things to help him out, and I think it helped the entire offense out. You're right, 86 points in the last 2 games.
And just really all in the last 6 quarters.
It's been I was about to say, it's been a really impressive stretch of football for 6 quarters here. Because, how many points did they have after the first at halftime against 14 against Ole Miss?
Because it's the last drive and the defensive touchdown.
So 21 points in the second half and 51. So 72 points in 6 quarters here. And it's kind of seemingly out of nowhere, and they've done it with 2 different quarterbacks. They've done it against a bad team and a good team.
But a good defense in Mississippi State.
Mississippi State has had that's what I was saying when I was watching that game. I was like, man, I didn't realize they were this bad defensively. And I know there are a couple games where you could show, but they've also had some really good. I mean, Arnett's a good defensive coach. Their better players are on the defensive side of the ball, and A&M did a terrific job. By the way, the O-line has played really well for 6 quarters as well, 6 quarters plus. So you wish it could have happened. We'd be talking about 8 quarters of it, and maybe this is a whole different conversation, but it's not. But look, there are 3 games left to play. And if they can keep playing the kind of defense they play, and they can stay healthy, and look, that's without Evan on Saturday. This could be a fun team to watch these next couple weeks.
We got about a minute, but I'm curious to see what Bobby Petrino does here the last 3 weeks, if it changes. Yeah. If now that, all right, Jimbo's not here, I don't have to merge the identity so much.
Great point.
I'd like to see what happens there.
That's a great point. And it would be fascinating if A&M went into Baton Rouge with Max or Jalen and just cut up that defense, which a lot of teams have cut up. It would be an incredible story if A&M could go win a shootout down there. Again, Florida went up and down the field on them. Problem is you're giving up 700 to Jaden Daniels and LSU. And they do that to damn near everyone.
Everybody.
But A&M's defense has been my problem is the matchup. And that's a game where, hey, Tyreek Chappelle, you want to earn some money, go out there and play a hell of a game against Neighbors and Brian Thomas. If they can match up on the perimeter there enough, those guys are going to get theirs. But you could – give yourself a chance to outscore LSU if you're in the mid to upper 30s, maybe even 42-38 type thing, if you're playing offense like they've played the last 6 quarters or so.
All right. Thank you, Billy.
All right,
great
Dave.
stuff and great reporting. It's been awesome to work next to you and see you do your thing. So
right
thank you
back
very
at
much.
you, buddy.
Appreciate you. All right. Tomorrow on the program, Pate State. That's right. Found out a few minutes ago. He'll be joining us at 10:20 tomorrow, plus all the slew of characters that you get to see on Tuesdays. You know the deal. That is going to do it for TexAgs Radio on a Monday. We'll see you mañana.